Just a Job is the podcast for the modern woman to redefine what success looks like. We highlight real women and their real stories.
Hi, everyone. Happy Monday. Welcome back to today's episode of Just a Job. Before we head into Jenny's episode, Ellen and I have some stand-up notes. So, Ellen, take us through your notes for today.
Happy Monday. Again, we've come prepared with not handwritten this time. I'm lying. Typed out notes on our shared notes app, which it always brings me so much joy to see when you update it in there and I get that little notification. I'm like, ooh, what did Sarah come across? Like, what is she thinking about right now? So I've got two notes for us. The first one, actually, Toby sent me. So thank you, Toby.
Thanks,
and
Toby.
It is this concept where millennials are, quote, redefining retirement and taking like micro sabbaticals in between each of their jobs instead of doing like a typical, I would say, retirement at a certain age. And it's interesting to see. I'm like, how did people afford to do this? That was my question, number one. And then two, how does that read on a resume? Like, are you getting penalized for taking significant gaps between jobs? I don't know, but
yeah,
it's all this like goofy renaming things to make it sound cool. Like it's a trend, redefining retirement.
Ooh, yeah, that was my first question. The timing of it was an intentional choice of like, I'm going to quit my job and take this gap, or was it like I got let go, so now I'm going to reframe it?
Right. Which like marketing is a superpower. So if you can reframe it in that way, fabulous. But I don't know, it's just an interesting concept that I think there are several ways in which millennials are like redefining the workplace in the first place. And taking this spin on retirement is interesting. And I thought it was interesting to share with the podcast.
Thank you.
My other one is this came from the Super Bowl, which womp womp the Chiefs.
Oh,
the Chiefs.
I don't know why I did this.
Well, you're close to Philadelphia,
And
so
I'm wearing
maybe that's
green. Yuck.
Oh,
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. Green. It's a great color on you.
Thank you.
The Chiefs lost,
Sad.
unfortunately, and whenever they did their hang on, what's the name of the word? Their media day, when they like go through all of the they get questioned, blah blah blah. An article came out of that Jalen Hurts has an all-female management team. And the way that the question was asked was like very probing, of course. And his answer was, he's also very stoic anyways. So his answer was not particularly out of the blue or like strayed from his normal personality, but he just was very matter of fact. Like, yeah, I needed to source the best team and make sure that the job gets done. And it just so happened that all happened to be women. It was really cool that, obviously girl power, like,
yeah.
I mean, I think that's kind of a given. But I loved his no nonsense response and also just matter of fact, like, yeah, they do a great job and that's why I hired him, period.
Yeah, period. It's the two layers, an all female management team, and then also two like women in sports.
Yeah. Like that's incredible. So cool. So cool. So those are my two things worth sharing. Sarah, talk us through your stand-up notes.
Okay, can do. Well, today, I guess a little bit of a sneak peek. Jenny's focus currently in her new role that she has created for herself is leveraging women that are mothers. So my two notes are about that, about parental leave. There's this woman, her name is Allison Whalen. There we go. And she is the CEO of Parentally. I don't know. Basically, they help companies create effective parental leaves. And she had an article. There was a study of 3,000 parents on parental leave. And there's 5 facts that I thought were really interesting. The first, strong parental leave policies are a must have for any organization. 94% of mothers would consider their company's parental leave when evaluating a job offer. 94. That's literally every person. 68% of women said that their number one concern with taking leave is the impact that it would have on their career, above both childcare and health concerns. They're more concerned about the impact that it'll have on their career than their own freaking health. Let's see. 73% of new parents consider leaving their company at least occasionally, and one third leave within 18 months of their return to work after parental leave. 52% of new mothers felt their team members were spread too thin. And those with effective managers are 2.5 times more likely to have a positive parental leave. So nothing new, just stating the facts of 3,000 people that were interviewed. In
100%.
the same thread last week, Starbucks parental leave, they had a new parental leave go into effect. It's noted that a store partner expecting their first child emailed the CEO, which I'm pretty sure the CEO is new-ish, right? Like within the last year.
I'm not sure.
I don't know. Part of me thinks, but I could be wrong. That basically employees would appreciate more time off with their families. This feedback led to Starbucks implementing a very generous parental leave policy in retail. So it's starting next month. The company will triple paid leave for birth parents up to 18 weeks and will double the time to 12 weeks for non-birth parents. That's incredible. That's crazy. I mean, yes, they have the money for it, but the
Sure.
fact that it wasn't just this like really long drawn out process, it was like somebody emailed and then a month later they're like putting in this new leave policy. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's a huge culture test, not only one for the employee to email the CEO directly, like snaps
right,
for them. That's incredible.
right.
But also it's rare that a corporation that large would take to heart like a letter or a suggestion from an employee, especially when it would be so costly, probably to
Mm-hmm.
the organization. So it's a testament. There's some other wild stuff going on with Starbucks, but I think this is at least a step in the right direction. And then, two, to the previous article that you referenced, I mean, considering a company when job hunting, I think most women, again, would do some sort of research to ensure that they, one, had a parental leave policy of some kind, but then also when they do eventually have a kid and are either the birthing parent or non-birthing parent, it's a
Mm-hmm.
huge test as to how your company will respond to you and your team when you are gone and when you come back. So
Yeah,
we'll see how Starbucks implements that. And I'm curious to see like the ins and outs and the details of that. But at least they're recognizing that they can and they will implement something that's longer than they previously offered.
definitely. And there's also the emphasis on paid parental leave. I think
Yeah.
sometimes
Good Lord.
companies try to hide behind a parental leave policy, but really
Mm-hmm.
it's like, yeah, you get 12 weeks of FMLA, basically
Mm-hmm.
ensuring that you have a job when you return. It's not paid.
Yep.
That's
Also,
that's the layer where it's like paid parental leave, not just parental leave.
and any sort of parental leave policy is negotiable. Negotiate that when you are going through job offers. I've done every single time. Please do that.
Mhm.
It is vacation time is on the table, so is parental leave. So if you
Totally.
can, throw it in there, see what you can get. The worst they can say is no.
Absolutely. Yeah, and potentially lose a really qualified candidate. Everyone, thank you for listening. Have a wonderful Monday and enjoy Jenny's episode.
Hello, everybody. We're going to jump into an episode with Jennie Yang. She started her executive coaching practice, Zula Group, in 2017 after becoming a certified master practitioner of transformational neuro-linguistic programming. NLP for short. With 15 years of experience as a strategic operator at a VC backed startups and scale ups, Jennie has coached founders, CEOs, and leaders on strategic decision making, navigating leadership team dynamics, fundraising, career moves, well being, and cultivating personal growth. As a former HR exec and mom of two littles, Jennie is also passionate about helping executive moms thrive. She's the founder of Chief Mama Officer, a membership community for founder and executive moms of young children and moms to be. She's currently based in Montana and she enjoys spending time outdoors with her family, hiking, mountain biking, and cross country skiing. Welcome, Jennie, to the podcast. We're so happy to have you.
Thanks, Ellen, so much for the intro, and I appreciate you and Sarah having me today.
Yes. So we need to like come up with a fun, fancy name for people who reach out and pitch themselves to us and say, hey, I like the idea of the podcast. Can I be on? Because it's so rewarding when people reach out and just I like notice our work, Sarah. I don't want to speak for you too,
Mhm.
but it's
Agreed.
so again, it's very rewarding. So thank you for finding us and pitching yourself to come on because again, we love meeting new people and it's one of the fun things that we love about the podcast as well. So that's a little bit about how we got to meet Jennie. So we're going to bring it back to younger Jennie and tell us, what did you want to be when you were growing up?
I love this question. The one thing that I wanted to become growing up was the first Asian American pop star. I was a
That's
singer.
awesome.
Yes, I loved singing. And I was like, oh, there are no Asian American pop stars out there. So I want to be that.
You had your sights set on it. Okay, fun to also throw in the fact that you're a singer. Is that something that you still dabble in now?
Ish, yes.
Okay.
As an
Okay.
amateur, I got a ukulele a few years ago, and yeah, just love singing and playing along with the ukulele. And now that I have two littles, as Ellen mentioned, a 4-year-old and a 9-month-old, it's just fun to get music into their bones and enjoy music time together.
And maybe inspire them to become singers.
Yeah.
Okay, this is amazing. So you wanted to be a pop star, specifically an Asian American, first Asian American pop star. At what point did that dust settle and your sights set on something and your career start to blossom?
That's a great question because I think my dreams were crushed by my
Oh no.
parents.
I'm like, I don't want to assume you're
Oh
not a
no.
pop star right now, but at
Sure.
some point we all have to
Right.
stop drinking the juice and figure our jobs out. But yes, okay, please continue.
That's right. It wasn't a part of my career bio. So clearly my dreams were crushed. Yeah, it was one of those passions where, I love singing, and still a core part of me today, and I still aspire, one day to possibly be that cover artist playing the ukulele at a restaurant in Hawaii sort of thing. And so it's still there. But when I go back and think about how I started my career, it was actually during the economic downturn in
Mhm.
2008. And so it was really challenging to find a job at the time. I just graduated from college, from Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. And a lot of the jobs locally that they were starting to get shut down, given the downturn. Like, a lot of companies were running layoffs, and so I actually looked to Washington, D.C. There were a lot of internships and fellowships that were happening in Washington, D.C., and that's where I kickstarted my career, with an internship at a public relations firm, and making $12 an hour. I actually
Mm.
shared a room with one of my closest friends. She was an intern on the Hill, and we literally made it work, where we just shared a room, shared a bed for the first year of our careers, because we were barely making anything. And
Oh, I
so,
love those
and
stories.
living paycheck to paycheck. So that was where the career started in Washington, D.C. And it's really been an organic, nonlinear path since then.
Oh, oh, you are it's like
Teeing
speaking
us
to our
up.
souls because that is exactly what we love to talk about. And I find it interesting the waves and the ebbs and flows of the career market and how how the career market has changed post the like I guess that's you could call it the recession with between that and then COVID, return to office policies. There's so many factors why the job market fluctuates the way that it does. So another thing we talk about a lot is the transition from college to the first job and how it is like whiplash. No one really can prepare you for that. School certainly doesn't prepare you and set you up for success in that way. So talk to us a little bit about why that transition was especially hard, not only just because of circumstantially you're going from one stage of your life to the other, but then on top of it, you were entering a difficult job market as well.
Hmm. I love this question as well. My most recent corporate gig was being an HR executive, and so this topic around career pathing and skill development is really near and dear to my heart. So back then, and even still, I don't feel that the education system, as it stands, supports job readiness. When you're at a job, you have to work within a team most of the time, and you have to be able to collaborate with others. Yet, a lot of the times in traditional education systems, we're not taught how to do that because we're taught how to study and to get good grades, right? We're taught how to memorize and, do work by repetition. And what I've noticed is that a lot of jobs require the skill sets of not only the human interaction, but also the technical skills, right? Of using an Excel spreadsheet. I don't think I ever used an Excel spreadsheet in high school. In college, I did because I was in business school and, was taught some accounting skills. However, it's not a skill set like everyone should be taught an Excel spreadsheet. I believe in elementary school and how to use one, or maybe not elementary school, middle school when you start to use a computer. And so really we're not equipped with both the technical and human skills to thrive and succeed in a job. And so there's that ramp up, right, of being able to operate day to day. And really it's a cognitive onboarding and ramp up because you're learning not only all of these technical skills, but you're learning the context of the job and the company. And you're also, learning the people and how to interact with the people. And more specifically, one of the key relationships to thriving in a role is your manager as well. And so ramping up to that relationship too.
Absolutely. Two things. Why is there not a life course that every student has to go through, either their junior or senior year when they're starting to go through internships? So this is what to expect with life. It could be 6 weeks, right? Like
Yeah.
something to prepare, because at some moment, every person goes through that phase of going, I was not ready for this, whether they experience it at a summer internship or their first job post grad. But Jennie, you made a point about schooling is not necessarily set up for life. And I think about this often, the butterfly effect of my choices. And had I been told it's not about your grades, I'm sure people told me this, but who was I to listen at 16, right? It's not about your grades. It's about being a sponge, get involved, meet people, just rely on experiences more than memorizing a
Yes.
chemistry chart. And I think about if I had had that focus, where would I be in life? Which there's no regrets, but it is interesting to think about, like, had I had more of that like experiential based learning, who would I be? But that's for another time.
Yes. We could talk about this for days.
Yes, I think about it often. So Jennie, knowing that you had the HR experience and also to this lens, this perspective, were you able to work with any sort of mentor or mentee? Like, did you have any relationships and any experiences that really solidified this is where I'm supposed to be? I would love to know from your perspective, because a lot of times we're having conversations with the employees on, like the execution side, but I'd love to know based on your experience on the HR side, how things shaped up for you.
Yeah, definitely. I'll bookmark that because I want to touch on something you mentioned about experiential learning. And it was also coming up for me as to um, a skill set that I was able to develop in high school and college was leadership. And it
Mm.
wasn't leadership through the academics, it was actually leadership through extracurriculars. And so a lot of my time and energy was invested in my extracurriculars to the dismay of my parents in high school and college. And I just loved showing up to team sports, and I loved showing up to, my a cappella group in college, and, was taking on leadership roles in, as a captain of my sports teams and, the musical director of my a cappella group. And it just naturally occurred that way where, I loved teaching people the skills, and I loved like amping people up to win and, to get fired up about a performance. And so, because I spent so much time in those spaces cultivating my own leadership skills, when I look back on that time, like that is actually what influenced, how I operated in the workplace. I think it was both the natural skill set, and also like being raised in a really competitive environment and wanting to rise up the ranks, and having my dad be a role model of rising up the corporate ranks. And, that's has led me to leadership roles at my previous employers. And so wanted to touch on the experiences and like, yes, there are the academics, but there's also the extracurriculars that, can support your own leadership development.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so going back to the HR piece and mentorship, I am such a huge advocate of mentorship, whether it is a program at scale and being able to create a mentorship program for a company, but also just as an individual, reaching out to people whose career paths inspire you. I'm even doing this right. I literally, before this call, have been looking at people in venture capital as an example. I have aspirations to possibly get into venture in the future. And so, I want to be able to learn the mindsets and, what is the actual day to day like as an investor. And so it never stops, right? Like having this like desire to connect with someone who is in the current seat of what you're hoping to do. And so in any case, when I was a management consultant, I supported my local office to create mentorship programs for people who are aspiring to become partners at the firm, as an example. And a couple years back at my previous employer, we created a mentorship program where we're using technology for it to be able to match mentors across the company and people who have like interests and all of that. So I believe it's extremely important to career success and
That's
discovery.
Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. You've had like the full scope of mentorship. Like you touched about something that I haven't thought of before of like technology to match you with the appropriate people to, I don't know, log your notes and what your goals are and have people go in and check in. I don't know, that just like made me think differently about it. I think that was very interesting. But I want to go. I keep picturing you and your roommate and like the first job out of school. And like you said, you're like paycheck to paycheck, you're grinding it out, you're learning, you're just kind of making your way. Talk to us about what that first job out of school was like and what you learned and maybe the like one thing that you were most proud of during that time frame.
Yeah, yeah. A memory came up in this as we were talking about that experience where, you're not necessarily taught, um, like social dynamics in a professional setting in school. And
Yeah.
so, like, one of my
Hmm. Hmm.
mistakes early on in my early 20s with this internship was I told a story to, the partners at this PR firm. I think that it was like a intern lunch where it was the interns with the partners, and basically the question was, what's a fun fact about you? And of course I go into this story that's inappropriate for a work setting about a high school experience, and it was just like totally inappropriate. And basically, the partner the next day like sat me down and was like, Jenny, like you cannot do that in a work setting. Like you need to like be able to set those boundaries as like, here's your warning and you're fine, but also just think about your professional brand, right?
Mm.
And so that is one like hiccup that I learned of like, oh, right, like you have to cater your message to your audience, right? I wasn't at a lunch with just the interns. I was at a lunch with the interns and the partners, right? And so being able to cater your message to the appropriate audience, and then when I also think about those times, that internship lasted for about the fall semester, and then I had to look for a full-time job. And it was really challenging. There weren't a lot of full-time jobs out there. However, I remember I can't recall if I feel like LinkedIn was early on, like
Mm.
really, really early in those days. And so I did reconnect with a old friend from Atlanta, Georgia, and she was working at a company in DC where I was like, hey, I noticed that you're hiring. Like, can I get a referral? And that's how I got in the door, was through a referral. And so that was also an early lesson of you get the doors open through referrals. and making an ask, right? And not being afraid to make an ask to get a referral from someone that you know who's currently at an organization that's hiring for a role that you might be interested in. So yeah, those were like two very key lessons, on both sides of the coin early on.
Don't overshare, and it's all who you know. There you go.
Yeah. Those are very valuable lessons to
They
learn,
are.
especially through an internship. Because those
Yes.
aren't lessons that are just exclusive to an internship. Those are career lessons. Those
That's
will
right.
stick with you. Yes. Okay, so I love that you're talking about leveraging connections, because we talk a lot about on the podcast about pitching yourself and setting up these lunch appointments or setting up coffee chats or just sending a message goes so far. And something that I think we can almost like encourage our listeners to do is like maybe just try once a month sending a Slack message, sending a DM. Like, if anything, right now is the most available that people are, because we have our phones in our hands and we can constantly make these connections. So, like, really, there's no excuses other than just I'm scared. But don't be scared. Everybody loves to hear from somebody. I want to take it now. You're transitioning now into this full-time role. First question, what was it like for you transitioning from the like psychological state of an intern to like this is full time, this is, doors are open, and then also to like what are some of the on the job lessons that you learned, and were you still in PR?
Yeah, great question. So, yes, it was interesting. So I transitioned. My first full-time role was at a healthcare consulting firm that was going from traditional research and consulting over to technology. And so I was a sales development representative, the SDR role that is oftentimes like you get your foot in the door in tech in
Mm-hmm.
the SDR role. And so I was an SDR in my first role and selling software to hospitals that had never heard of this company before. And so it was what we called pure prospect, where I got to, create new business opportunities and basically sell the brand as well. And so it was hard. We didn't have a lot of the technologies that SDRs have back then, 15, 16 years
Mm-hmm.
ago, where I literally had to pick up the phone and cold call and literally look through manual address books for people's phone numbers. And so it's just wild how technology has evolved as we have been adopting AI nowadays. And so I look back and it was just this pure grit and resilience that I had developed of having this monthly goal that I had to hit. And I hit it. And I was working extremely long hours, probably 80-hour weeks. I was probably one of the first people to get into the office and the last people to leave. And it was
Wow.
because I was so competitive and goal oriented. I wanted to be at the top of the leaderboard. And yet, the lesson learned there was wow, I really sacrificed my physical and emotional well being for work and to be that high achiever and the perfectionist that wanted to get to the top of the leaderboard. And I suffered for about 3 months from a pinched nerve, this condition called occipital neuralgia, where I could not get out of bed. It took like an hour to get out of bed because I could not move my neck. It would be excruciating pain. And so my body was telling me to slow the fuck down.
Yeah.
Like,
I was gonna
slow
say,
down, girl.
Screaming at you at that
Literally.
point. Yeah.
don't you
Yeah.
hate when it takes that significant of
Mm-hmm.
like a physical ailment for you to
Yes.
realize, I might need to slow down a little bit and take
Yes.
some time for myself and not pull an 80-hour work week. But like you said, you had that competitive like personality and you were like, I am seeing direct success out of the time that I put in. So I'm going to keep doing it. I mean, it's like
Mm-hmm.
that slippery slope in sales of I'm good at
Yes.
this and I get paid more the better I am. And,
Yes.
off to the races, off you go. So how did you come, like, obviously you felt the physical pain, like I have a pinched nerve and I can't move. I can't get out of bed. Outside of that, like, what was your mental state like of realizing like, oh crap, I might need to do something about this?
Yeah, and it was really interesting because I remember showing up to work still in pain, right? It would take an hour to get up or whatever, but I would still show up. I would still make my calls. Like I literally like couldn't even move my neck to turn to go see, a colleague. But it was, I
Oh
have to
my
like
God.
awkwardly turn my chair slowly. And
Oh
but the mental state was like, I needed to prioritize my physical healing in order to like perform at work. And I was also still playing competitive ultimate frisbee. And so I was like, in order to be able to heal and to play and to get out there back on the field, like I have to like prioritize my body and
Mhm.
prioritize like going to physical therapy appointments and going to the neurologist. And it was a really huge lesson. And at the same time, I was still, of course, I gamified it of like, okay, like how do I still like be at the top of the leaderboard, right? Like with this condition, and actually pulling back on the hours, like it didn't impact my performance. So it was learning how to do things a bit more efficiently, or finding the leverage, with leveraging other internal resources, or having one of the account executives support me a little bit more, or building mentoring relationships. That's what I also did there, was critical. I remember I just had these incredible mentors. There were three of them. One was my manager, and I had two others who were in the next role, the customer success manager type of role, which was my next step, mentoring me through the way. And they also became friends. And so I like started building more community, like in my healing process internally at the company. And it was, really powerful to have, my own like inner team of advocates and mentors at
Mhm.
the company.
I love that because my follow-up question was going to be, okay, so you have this chronic pain, you have this chronic issue. The first thing that I think most people want to do is just like continue, study the course, it'll work itself out. Like this will just rid itself. But it sounds like you took a very proactive approach in putting yourself first, asking for help, relying on additional resources. Because I think the best manager, this is also, I think, alluding to the fact that who you had in your corner were very well selected people,
Yes.
because in times of need they were able to help you. And that was going to be my next question, was like, how did you reach out for help? So thank you for answering that, and advocating for yourself. I think that's really important. Was there any point in that journey that you were thinking, okay, maybe this was a sign, maybe this is an opportunity for a career change? Or if it wasn't that moment, what led you to the next step in your career?
Yes. So there is a lifeline to the SDR role, and really, it is a very high burnout, high turnover type of role, right? And
Sure.
so, it was one of those things where it was like, 10% of the SDRs would either progress their they would progress their careers there, or otherwise they would get fired because they weren't hitting their goals, or
Mhm.
it just wasn't a fit for them to move on to the next role at the company. And so there were three different career paths for the SDR role. One would be becoming an SDR manager. The other one would be going into more of a customer success role, and another one would be becoming a sales rep, an account executive. And so when I thought about those three paths, it was the customer success piece was really interesting. I was motivated by curiosity of like, okay, I'm pitching this product and the software. What happens after it gets sold? Like, what happens with the customer and being able to deliver this platform and software? And so that's where I, to your point, strategically had those two mentors who are already in that role, so they could sort of teach me the ropes. I could shadow them, watch how they deliver calls and how they think, and ask them questions. And then when it came time to interview for that role, I was really prepared, in terms of how do I tailor my experience as an SDR to this interview for the CSM role? How is my experience applicable? And so there was a lot of, I would say, just curiosity and leveraging my mentors, of asking them a ton of questions, and just showing interest too, of like, hey, I'm super stoked about this opportunity. And I think that's really what got me to the next step. And so there was also a consulting branch there. And, I sort of dabbled into that and had a hybrid role in my third year at that company. And that led me to the next step of becoming a management consultant, which was um, at the time of graduating college, a dream job. But a lot of management consulting firms weren't hiring at that time, and so I was like, "Ooh, this is my opportunity to like land my dream job." And I had interviewed at 4 different firms, and I actually got the role at the company that I was like, oh, this is going to be the best op. And landed it. And ironically, again, this is where like the magic and the power of building your network and relationships came about, where I had a friend who was working who I mentioned to, like, serendipitously, that I was interviewing at Deloitte. This was a management consulting firm, and one of the managing directors so happened to be the best friend of her uncle. And so that's where I got connected to this managing director. And it just so happened that the managing director was the partner of the practice that I was interviewing for. And
It's a good
so it's
person to
like,
know.
yeah, it's just like one of those things where if you just like plant your seeds, right, and you just
Mhm.
speak your desires out into the universe and with the people that there's these connection points that the universe will manifest for you. And so like that's what
Absolutely.
I've learned is like like to your point, like yes, even though it's scary AF, like you just got to put yourself out there and like say what you want. And even if like that doesn't happen, like if it doesn't manifest, that's okay. It's like just the exercise of putting out there what you want,
Mhm.
and speaking it out to people, and like
Yeah.
things will just start to unfold.
Absolutely.
Totally. I heard on a podcast somewhat recently, this like successful entrepreneur, and he was talking about his rise to success, and something he said that I have like just hit me like a ton of bricks in the chest was, if you had, I'm gonna pick a number, like 30 no's between now and like your dream job or your like financial goal, like how excited would you be to get your first no? And that was speaking true to me as you were just going through your experience of, it's uncomfortable putting yourself out there, but like, what is the worst that's gonna happen? You're not gonna get the job. Okay, another one's gonna come along. Someone's not gonna respond to your LinkedIn message. Okay, someone else is going to respond. So that rang true to me as you were talking about that. And I'm starting to like see the themes of your careers come together as well, which is like, it's like my favorite part in an interview when I'm like, oh, it all makes sense. I get it. When you're talking about the different career paths that you were interested in, I can kind of start to see the wheels turning there, the how important mentors, and like I always call it, the building of your own personal board, your board of mentors, and having those people around you. You're building your network so that as you continue to progress in your career, you have those people around you that you can call on to land a job that you're really excited about. So what was your experience like at Deloitte? I find it fascinating. I'm a project manager, so I get to hire the Deloittes and everybody else, which is really fun. And I'm never on the other side, which is a little scary because I see the crazy PowerPoints and I see them being delivered at 1 in the morning and all sorts of crazy things. So what was it like? And what was your experience like, and what did you learn?
I'm just giggling over here because I'm like, wow, I was there 10 plus years ago, and I'm like,
Mhm.
oh wow, it's still like that.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
So this is where I think there's this saying of the grass is always greener. You like
Mhm.
you realize your dream, or your dream comes true, and then reality hits. And so there's always going to be something, right, that
Yeah.
is a pain point. And so of course, the experience at Deloitte was so enriching, where I picked up so many technical and human skills there when it came to we mentioned Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoints, right? Perfecting PowerPoints and
Icons, all those fun things.
and storytelling, and
Oh,
how
yeah.
to cater your message to your audience. There were so many incredible skills that were nurtured and catered. They had this incredible facility called Deloitte University, where they invested in cohorts of consultants to go there and learn and to do case studies together. And so it was really a powerful learning experience. When it came to the actual working environment, it just burnt me out. It's interesting to go back and look back on my 15-year career, where there's just all of these cycles of burnout, right? Where you start with, there's the onboarding excitement, amazing. And then you start to realize like, oh, this is a work culture of 80 to 100-hour work weeks. Or sometimes the culture was actually like my own internal culture of like, oh, my work ethic of, grinding it out when I didn't necessarily have to in certain companies. However, I was just fully burnt out. And I knew within the first year that it wasn't a fit. It like wasn't the long term. I didn't want to become a partner. Like I was like, if this is the actual toll that, again, like the second lesson of like, if this is going to be the physical toll that it's going to have on me, like this is not worth it. Like, am I going to dedicate another, 40 years of my career, like, getting totally burnt out and not getting sleep? And so, that was a big lesson. And however, I did stay there for about 2.5 years, and eventually I got staffed on a project where I really loved the project team, and I loved the work, the client, and I loved the work that we were doing. And at that time, I also got clarity that I wanted to transition into tech. This was in 2012, 2013, where, Silicon Valley was becoming, a bit bigger of a thing. And, I actually decided to move I was living in Washington, D.C., and I actually decided to move offices with Deloitte to San Francisco so that I could start building my network in San Francisco. And, this was one of the jobs where I actually did a cold application to, and we, and manifested this job opportunity and got a foot in the door into tech. There's a lot that we could go into there, but yes, the management consulting experience was great, and also eye-opening around how I wanted to be in a more sustainable working environment.
I love that you're hitting on that, because this is something I've expressed to Ellen, something that we talk about quite frequently. Burnout. It creeps up. It comes for everyone at some point. And I think we obviously talk to women, and primarily only women on the podcast. We have men in our circles, but for the podcast's sakes only. It's interesting having these conversations over and over again about the burnout creeps in no matter how much you love your job. The burnout creeps in no matter how much time you try to create boundaries. The burnout creeps in, honestly, no matter what. If you had to give one person one piece of advice in terms of how you best approached burnout, what would that be?
Dang, Sarah, that's a good question.
It's loaded because I think that it's, for most cases and most people, like we just had Taylor on the podcast, burnout doesn't show up until it's like physically, like you said, even yourself, Jennie, it's physically manifested itself in it's your body. And it's like, you cannot operate at this anymore. But I'm trying to, this is something that's been on my mind a lot, is just seeing burnout before it becomes burnout.
That's right. Well, yes, the first critical component is knowing that that you're a product of your environment. And so getting a sense of what, as you're interviewing for a company, like what is the work culture and the pace and the environment like? Like, what are the leaders like? What are the managers like? Right? That is so critical, is like, what environment are you getting yourself into? Because that already, like, if it is, what I would consider a toxic or a wounded environment where there's, a lot of politics or, people yelling at each other or manipulation or whatever, like that in itself is like immediate recipe for burnout. Right. And then the second piece that I would share some guidance around is role fit. And so, having been a hiring manager, a manager of large teams, HR leader, is, are you in a role where you are leveraging skills that you have built competence in, or skills that you are naturally talented in? I like, there's this concept called zone of genius, where I
Mhm.
love it when people nod their heads when I say that, because
Mhm.
that's what I want to unlock in everyone, and in myself and in my children, and really it's this concept of, what are the activities that make you feel most alive and energized, and that just naturally come to you. You feel like you're in a state of flow. And then there's this element of zone of excellence, where there are these activities and tasks and responsibilities that you do really well at, but they don't necessarily energize you. And so, like,
Mm.
one example for me would be, for zone of excellence, is like, great. Like, I love getting into spreadsheets and I love organizing data and analyzing it and all that, but that's not necessarily my zone of genius. My zone of genius is coaching people and helping them get past their limiting beliefs and to get towards what they want. And that's what just brings me so much joy and meaning and fulfillment. And so there's this gray area, where I notice, and I've done this in my career path many times, where I want to get a foot in the door in an organization. And so I go for the job where I have the relevant experience and the
Mhm.
skills. But it's not necessarily something that I'm like, oh, I'm going to be doing this for the rest of my life. This is like what like gets me up every morning, right? And so that's where, like, considering and reflecting on the fit of the role for you, of like, is this actually something that's getting me up every morning,
Mhm.
and motivating me to get out of bed?
Okay, light bulb. That
um,
that's such a light bulb moment, the distinction of zone of genius, zone of excellence. These are 2 words, and I think I assumed they were interchangeable, but hearing
Mm,
the
mm,
distinction and understanding, this is what gives me life and this is what I'm good at. Ideally, you find a place that combines both, but thank
yes.
you. That was
Mhm.
wonderful. I'm sitting here going, "Duh." Okay, Ellen, you look like you had a
I could
question.
see the light bulb going off above your head
I know, I'm like
as
over here like pen and paper
yeah,
noted.
yeah. Wait, let's say that again. Let me write this down really quick.
Right, I know.
Jenny, I also think something that's really interesting about your career is you're pivoting. Like, you started out
Mhm.
interning in PR, then you went into like the tech space, and you were in consulting, you were in HR. Like, what? How did you make those pivots? Like, if someone's listening today thinking about, oh my God, I hate my job, or I can't stand being, I'm picking on myself, I can't stand being in finance, I want to go do something else. What advice would you give to those people who are looking to make a significant career change, whether that be industry wise or role wise?
Mm, this is such a timely question. I've been talking to several executive moms who are contemplating career moves like
Mm.
this, where it's completely shifting industries or, roles, applying their relevant experience to, a new vertical. And so when I look back on my career, it's always been about curiosity and this desire to learn and grow and to expand and evolve. I noticed that my husband and I like to joke that we have really fast internal timers, where, like, every 18 months we're like, okay, what's next? What's next? Like, we want to continue to
Yep.
grow and expand. And so that's just sort of been our internal clock of just wanting to um, satiate this internal drive for, um, I guess, expanding our skill sets, and applying them to different problems. And so, what I feel really passionate about is, like, one, getting clear on, like, what causes are do you feel motivated by? And so, like, for me, I feel really motivated by mental health and education and, um, well-being, also climate, and anything that's like impact related. And And then, thinking through, okay, great, like what skills could I apply to those problem sets? Okay, great. Like, who on LinkedIn has, experience in both of those or one of those areas, like in that vertical industry, and or, those skill sets, like in that job that I'm looking for, sort of like what I did early on in my career. And just, it goes back to earlier in our conversation of like not being afraid to ask for that warm intro. I think I think what's really important nowadays is like facilitating warm intros. Like cold outreach on LinkedIn is really challenging to get a response. It's just there's so much volume out there, and it's like very few and far and in between that you will get a response for cold outreach. Like, yes, like it works, once in a blue moon. But really, like seeing like who's connected to who and who might be able to, get you that intro. And then when I think about a career move internally at a company, really you have to demonstrate results like in the current role. So that was my strategy and approach was, like at my previous employer that I was at for 6.5 years, I went into the door with my customer success experience and I was like, great, like I love building and scaling customer success teams. That's my experience. However, I don't believe that this is my end all be all, and I demonstrated results. I grew that team from a headcount of 3 to 19 in a year, like managed the P&L and was able to, grow our annual recurring revenue. And it was really enriching. And I also realized, like after a year of it and feeling a little burnt out on it, growing a fast scaling team, I was like, okay, what do I actually really enjoy about this job? Oh, it's actually the hiring decisions, it's the coaching and development of the people. And that's what inspired my vocalization of it to my manager and was like, hey, I really want to explore a potential opportunity internally to make this move over onto the HR side of the house and do this at scale. And I had to plant those seeds multiple times and I had to be strategic about it. I had to think through like, okay, like what's the budget looking like? What's the headcount growth looking like for the next year? And these are all questions that you could ask your manager for sure of like, hey, like what are the headcount growth plans for next year if they don't share it publicly, right? And just being able to ask in a one-on-one. And so it took a full year of, I would say on a quarterly basis, I was like reminding my manager of like, hey, just like saying this again, I was very proactive about my own professional development. And he was, and the manager was always like, he was the chief revenue officer. He was like, we have to like wait until the timing's right so that we pitch this right to over, to the head of HR. And so it took about a year and a half for it to manifest, but it did. And they took a bet on me in taking on a role where I had no HR experience, but I had transferable skills and I had proven results at the company. So they were willing to take a bet on me. Mm-hmm. And so that's where, again, like the self advocating for yourself and the results that you've made and noticing. And I always coach and mentor people around, you have to pitch what the business need is first. Of like, hey, I'm noticing that we're scaling really fast as a company and there's all these managers that aren't getting manager training, and that is an acute need for our like success as a company. Like we need to train our managers so that they're highly effective so that we in turn can impact the performance of our teams and the engagement of our teams and employee retention and all that. So like bringing it back to the business case versus like you as the individual. So again, speaking to the collective result that you would have in a particular role. So yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Sarah had a light bulb moment earlier. That was my light bulb moment.
Love it.
Pitching your career move as a business case, like flipping the idea on its head. Ooh, I'm like, I should have my notepad and pen out.
Take it for you, Ellen.
So I can start writing some things down. Like, what incredible tactical advice that was in that, 2-minute little segment. That was, I need to go back and watch this and write some things down. So I want to get into what you're currently focused on now, because I think the mission behind your work at Chief Mama Officer is so incredible and important and needed. And it's something that is, I would say, more common for people, for women to start talking about, but it can always be brought up and reflected upon more. So, talk to us about the mission behind it, and where you're hoping for it to go.
Yes, yes. So, what I'm currently working on is I'm actually in a interesting phase of my career journey. It's a new chapter in a book where it's first time entrepreneurship. And so my coaching practice was always a side hustle alongside this past company that I was working at for 6.5 years. And I always had, one or two coaching clients on the side. And so this chapter is me expanding my coaching practice full time. And I actually have a 9-month-old baby. And so it was, after I took my maternity leave, I actually decided not to go back to the company because I realized that flexibility was so important in this phase of life, having two little kids. I didn't want to be in back to back meetings from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. and then doing work late at night after bedtime. And so now, really, I thought about how do I scale myself? Because if I were to replace my corporate income with, becoming a full time executive coach, that would also probably look like back to back meetings. And so, how do I scale myself one to many? Oh, a community would be great. And so I started thinking through, like, if I wanted to be a part of a community, what would that look like? And so I am a part of other communities, like a fractional HR leader one. There were a lot of working mom communities out there, but I'm like, what about the executive mom community? And I didn't find it out there, so I started it in October, and we launched programming in November. So it's really new. It's only been around for a few months, and I'm in service to executive moms with young kids and moms to be. And it's a really wonderful group of moms that are committed to investing in their own well being. And really, it's this intention of keeping them sane and well so that they thrive in both their jobs and in at home with their kids and with their spouses. And because I've really struggled as a first time executive and a first time mom several years back, it was just so much to ramp up into both roles at the same time. And I felt so alone. It was the pandemic. I was working remotely, working from home, moved to a new place, like didn't know anyone. And so I just wanted to bring this group together of like, we're in like a similar phase of life, going through very similar challenges. So let's talk about it and let's get to the root of it and support each other in our own aspirations.
Jennie, thank you. I feel
Yes.
like Ellen and I are not mothers, but as women in general, any intention to support another woman is one that I will just fully support, but also to such a, I don't want to say marginalized community, but it's such a lost community. There's not conversation about women. There's not conversation about women in the workforce. And then mothers, first time mothers, fourth time mothers, whatever you're at, but especially to the layer of executives. You have essentially this family that you're already overseeing at a company, and now you're supposed to give unto yourself to your own family. And so I can't even imagine the depth of the conversations that you're having. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm like kind of getting emotional thinking about the impact that you're bringing into this world. So thank you for building this because I think it's incredible. I want to know from you, like, it's been a couple of months. How have things been? And like, what's something that's making you really excited right now?
I'll start with the latter part. So what's making me really excited is that these executive moms are showing up. They are hella busy. I mean, and a reason why I created it's a membership community. So there's an annual fee, and it's accessible. It's $600 a year, and and there's other executive memberships that are $7,000 a year as an example.
Mm-hmm.
And so people they're showing up, which to me is really important, because I mean, gosh, when you have when you have executive responsibilities, it's nuts. It's like you have your own children at work, except they're adults and
Definitely.
sometimes act like children. and then, and then
Yep.
you also have your kids. And so I lived it. I lived and breathed it, where it was literally life for several years was primarily work, and then my kid, like, and I wasn't fully present all of the time. And so it was just, it was, and I didn't make time for anything else. Like I didn't make time for a yoga practice or like, and
Mhm.
over the weekends, like, yes, I would make time for like a hike, but then I'd still be working over the weekend, and so,
Mhm.
um, I would say that the mom showing up, and then every single coffee chat that I have with an executive mom is just like they resonate, like, oh my gosh, like this has been so needed. And so there is a market need and a desire for this type of community, which is really exciting. um I think the other aspect, though, if I think about like the shadow side of it, is that when we look at the stats of it, I was just on a call where, and I see these stats on LinkedIn all the time about how only there was only 2% of venture capital that went to female founded businesses. There still isn't like significant equity on board seat representation. I've seen and witnessed boards where it's all men. And so really I'm here for this, taking a stand in, having more representation of women, and specifically moms
The
on boards and
superheroes.
executive teams.
Seriously.
Yeah.
Yes, totally. Um, so yeah, it's interesting though, because when I think through, my own personal experience, I lived in this paradigm where I had a stay-at-home mom of 3 kids, and a dad who was the primary income provider, and so that was the model that I lived with. And and right now, as I take the leap of faith into entrepreneurship and standing behind this mission that I'm really passionate about, it's my system, my internal operating system is having a hard time sort of finding this integration of like, wow, like I'm a working mom, but I'm also at home. And we have childcare support too. We
Mhm.
have luckily have the means to have a nanny who helps out. And at the same time, there are so many women right now who are working moms, especially of young kids, that are, it's like they're the first women in their lineage to be doing this sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just figuring it out step by step and fumble by fumble. And like, a lot of the times executive moms are describing like, I'm just surviving. Like, and most moms, like most working moms too, are just like, I'm just surviving day to day. But it's like, and so really my goal is like, how do I just infuse a little bit of well-being, right? And like shifting the mindsets around, like, I can invest in myself and I can prioritize myself and my own well-being physically and mentally and emotionally, to be able to give back more to my family and to work.
To echo what Sarah said, thank you. I resonated with, like, I think almost 100% of what you just talked about. I had a similar environment growing up. It was my dad working and my mom was staying home with my sister and I, which was incredible. Like, she was room mom. She took us to field trips. Like, I mean, I wouldn't have it any other way. And now, as my husband and I start to think about how we want our family to be, and future kids down the line, it's going to look different for us, just economically. I mean, there's thousands of
Yes.
factors, right?
Mm-hmm.
And something that I personally like really struggle with, and this is like very topical with this conversation, but I go back and forth between, oh, I finally feel like I'm really hitting a significant stride in my career. And I'm at a place where I'm proud of myself, but I can also see a path into the future of, making more money, getting a higher title, being proud of the work that I'm doing, but then also having a family on this at the same time. And like, I'm in my mind, I'm like, how the hell am I going to do that? I don't think I can do both things, and maybe that's okay. But again, I think with this community that you're building, I might be one of those members here in a little bit.
Yeah.
So be on the
Yes.
lookout for that. But it's so important because I just, like Sarah said, like any sort of community or place or forum to support women, number one, huge fan of, but two, like it's really wonderful blend of selfishly where I'm at in my life. And I know, Sarah, we've talked about this a lot too with, the sacrifice that is wanting to have a family and also working at the same time. So I really appreciate one, talking about it, but then two, again, this like incredible thing that you have created to be able to allow a place for women to go to talk
Yes.
and to sympathize and empathize and say, yes, it sucks. And I'm right there with you. And I'm fumbling my way through. So thank you. And I just, I I appreciate it and I wish more people did it. Can you talk about some of this like specific services that you
Mhm.
provide to your community and what those look like for one, myself, I'm interested, and I'm sure listeners are interested as well.
I love it, Ellen. Yes. So the membership to Chief Mama Officer includes this community of powerhouse women, folks who have high ambitions, who are crushing it in their jobs, um, and the industries span through, like health, tech, government, nonprofit. We have a blend of founders and CEOs, as well as services, revenue executives, some former strategic planning execs, a few entrepreneurs like myself, former executives, and yeah, it's really a group that is dedicated to their own inner work, and accountability, to growing and growing together. And so that's the community aspect. And so access to a community platform. And there's 2 events each month. Curated Connection on First Friday, which is an in-depth networking call where I pose 2 questions to the group, and we sort of just get to the heart of it and get to know each other a bit more, see how we can support each other. And then there is a workshop on the 3rd Wednesdays of each month, and that is a workshop that I have delivered thus far, around topics that are of interest to the community, such as creating space for yourself. And honestly, I believe that that is the secret sauce to thriving as in having both and, a career, an executive career, and also, thriving as a mom. And so, just continually exercising the skill of like creating space for ourselves, even if it is 5 minutes a day. And other topics such as like visioning for 2025 and how do we anchor in and support each other in manifesting our visions in 2025. We have a couple of upcoming workshops. One of our founding members that's going to facilitate is a negotiation expert. And so there's other different skills, such as that. And yeah, and just organically, whatever topic comes up, I sort of am flexible with, the content and programming. And then also with membership is a one-on-one coaching session with me, included in there. And I'm also launching a partner ecosystem called the Village of preferred partners across different parenting verticals. So a household management app called Maple, the Sundays, the virtual assistant, offering the also different mom brands, and so really I'm offering discounts to the founding members through these partners. So the Village will be launched this month, and yeah, it's that, and yeah, we'll see what the future brings. That's the membership to start. And so it's a growing and loving community of really lovely, like-minded, like-hearted, executive moms and moms to be as well.
Jennie, you're making moves.
Yeah.
You are making moves, incredible moves. And I hope you're able to take a moment, press pause, and be able to reflect on everything that you've built and will continue to build in year one. It's incredible. I want to get into the big question, and also we'll include everywhere that you can find Jennie and Chief Mama Officer and all of her amazing services in the show notes. So press pause now if you need to. Go find that in the episode description and then come back for this big question. But Jennie, how do you define success for yourself?
It's an ever evolving question. And when I fast forward to my deathbed, it's about how I made people feel. Like how are my children going to remember me, and what is the impact that I had on them? And so obviously children, those are the first people I come to, but like children, family, chosen ohana, like communities, like other people, right? And so it's really impact. And sometimes, so much about business is like, how do you quantify your impact? And, what are the leading and lagging indicators? What are the KPIs and all of that? And like, there was I think it was Tony Hsieh, the founder of Zappos, who had a quote of like, how do you quantify, like, what's the ROI of hugging your mom?
Infinity.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. And so now that I have kids and I understand that, like, it's like just there is something special about, like, to your point about like being women and being surrounded by women, but also like the experience of being a mother. It like really shifts perspective around like your own mother and then just women in general and how badass we are of being able to, give childbirth and all that. And yeah, and just like there's nothing else like mom, really, right? The comfort and like they're like it's priceless. And so just like thinking through like success to me is it like having impact on others.
I like that one. I love the question. I love the answers, but I feel like some of them will follow like a typical theme, I'd say, and that is an outlier in a very good way. And I love it's tricky, right, to like tie success if you're wired in the corporate way of leading and lagging KPIs, SLAs, all of that fun stuff, to then be able to say you can't quantify that kind of success, like the ROI of hugging your mom. I love that. It's a really good visual. Jennie, we're going to jump into some rapid fire questions for you. So the first, what is one thing you cannot live without to make it through the workday?
Morning coffee and afternoon tea.
Ooh, I need to try an afternoon tea. That sounds lovely.
That feels like peak workplace setting choice. I don't know. I need to do that. Yeah. Jennie, what is one of your favorite benefits that you've ever had through work?
I actually was thinking about this. I did some downhill skiing this past weekend, and I was like, wait, didn't Deloitte cover my like one of my like skiing equipments? We had $1,000 wellness subsidy, and they still have it. I looked it up. Yeah,
Incredible.
Yeah,
That's insane.
it was great. It was amazing.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I like bought camping gear, like all this stuff. Yeah.
So cool.
Yeah. Oh, also 401k match is key. I gotta say. Looked at my
The
recent
unsexy
401k
stuff,
Yeah.
but very important. Right?
Yes.
What other questions? Oh, I wanted to know, especially with your work experience, what is your least favorite corporate catchphrase?
Least favorite. Open the kimono.
I've never heard that before. What? That's hysterical. Oh my God.
Okay. Well, that one has never even hit the list, and it will continue to never hit the list.
That's hysterical.
Let's see. Last question. Workplace pet peeve.
Oh yeah, this one's a funny one. So quarterly business reviews, where it's
QBRs.
mandatory for you to be there, but everyone is multitasking.
No one's paying attention.
No one's paying attention.
And you've gone through 18 reviews of this deck, and
Yes.
you've analyzed every font and every phrase,
Yes.
and no one's looking.
Those are expensive, by the way. Just
Exactly.
generally
That's what I'm
speaking.
saying. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
a waste of time.
Yes. Yes.
Oh my gosh. Jennie, it was such a joy to have you
Incredible.
here and hear about your experience and the incredible work that you're doing with Chief Mama Officer. Thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you.
Yes, thank you so much, Ellen and Sarah. It's been such a delight. Love
Oh,
chatting with you
great.
too.
Oh, I love that. It's been a delight. Look at us, Sarah. We're delights. Um, I will make sure to include all of the places, like Sarah said earlier, that you can find Jennie and Chief Mama Officer. Please go check her out. We'll make sure to include her website, LinkedIn, all of those fun things. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And remember, it's literally just a job.